Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. The restaurant was full of people mingling, and in the midst of the mingling, Michael looked over at his wife, Emma, at the other end of the table, who was talking and laughing with the man. Michael's hand clutched the flash drive in his suit pocket, knowing that in another 15 minutes, this elaborate family gathering would turn into a disaster. 6 months ago, such a disaster had not yet bared its fangs. It was an ordinary Wednesday morning, and Michael was standing in front of the dressing mirror in his bedroom straightening his tie. The man in the mirror looks tired but lean, his deep eye sockets and occasional flashes of military bearing highlighting the successful transition the former Special Forces member has now made in the medical technology field. "Dad, I need help with my science homework." Tom, his 10-year-old son, rushed into the room, waving his workbook in his hand. "Let Mom help you. I have an important meeting today," Michael replied as he quickly shoved the papers into his briefcase. He glanced at his wristwatch. The company was going to discuss an important medical device development project today. Emma leaned against the doorframe, frowning slightly in her neat professional attire. "Michael, you promised that today would be?" "I'm sorry, honey, the project is important," Michael said as he walked quickly past and gave Emma a quick kiss on the cheek. "I'll try to be back early." Emma sighed as she watched her husband's hurriedly departing back. As a school counselor, she knows all too well the potential impact of such a scenario on family relationships. But she chose to remain silent and turned to helping Tom organize his book bag. The school opened in the spring with a new physical education teacher, James Wilson. He was young, handsome, and outgoing, and quickly became the students' favorite teacher. Emma first met him in the teacher's lounge, where he was enthusiastically telling a couple of female teachers about his experiences volunteering in Africa. "You must be Emma," James turned to her with a smile. "The students say you're the most understanding teacher." Emma nodded politely in response, but a ripple ran through her insides. How long had it been since someone had looked at her so intently? In the days that followed, James often came to talk to Emma during his lunch break. From educational philosophies to life experiences, the two have an unexpected resonance. Emma found herself beginning to look forward to these conversations. They filled a certain void in her life. "You know, I think you're especially good for counseling," James said sincerely one day. "You have a special warmth that makes people want to talk." Emma felt her cheeks burn. "It's just a professional necessity." "No, it's your gift," James gazed at her. "A trait that sadly few people really appreciate these days." These words were like a key that gently opened a certain dusty door in Emma's heart. The atmosphere in the house grew duller and duller. Michael often works late into the night on new projects, and Emma's greetings gradually become mechanical. Tom senses the estrangement between his parents and begins to spend more time on video games. One weekend morning, Emma was alone in the garden pruning roses. James suddenly appears outside the fence and says he's come to return the lesson plan materials. "It's beautiful," James exclaimed, but his eyes fell on Emma. "You know, you take care of the flowers as gently as you take care of every child in need." Emma felt her heart race as she looked away in panic. "James, this isn't appropriate." "Why is it inappropriate?" James asked softly. "Is it wrong to care about someone who is neglected?" Emma didn't answer, but she knew that something was changing. That night, Michael missed dinner again because of a program meeting. Emma sat at the dining room table and watched her son pick at his plate of food alone, suddenly feeling a pang of unspeakable loneliness. Early the next morning, Emma received a message from James. "Good morning. Wanted to share the sunshine with you today." The accompanying photo is a photo of a rose in the morning sun, with a great angle and composition. Emma stared at the screen of her cell phone for a long time, unable to hit the reply button. She knew that she was standing on the edge of a dangerous line. But when she looks up and sees her dimming self in the mirror, some inner voice whispers, maybe it's time to live for herself for once. One day a month later, Michael came home early to pick up his papers and saw Emma talking to a man in front of the school from a distance. The man gazed fondly at Emma, who had a smile on her face that he hadn't seen in a long time. Michael stood in the shadows on the corner, watching the scene with a somber expression. As a former member of the Special Forces, his instincts tell him that there's a crack in his perfect life, and it's a crack that's widening at an unpredictable rate. He fished in his pocket for his cell phone and dialed a number he hadn't contacted in a long time. "Jack, I need you to look into someone for me." The call brought Michael back to his own military experience. During his 8 years of service in the Special Forces, he learned the most important lesson of all: never trust appearances so easily. At the moment, the intuition that this military career had given him was frantically signaling an alarm. Early the next morning, Michael purposely went to the office an hour early. He stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows and watched the city awaken in the morning light. The new project was about to enter a critical phase, and as head of the R&D department, he knew that this medical device could change the lives of thousands of patients. But at the moment, he was completely unable to focus. "Good morning, boss." Assistant Sarah handed over a file. "The board has requested that the project progress report be moved up to next week." Michael took the file, his eyes scanning over the dense data. At one time, all of these challenges had made his blood boil, but now, his mind was full of that disturbing smile of Emma's. "By the way," Sarah added, "your wife called this morning and said that tonight is Tom's science demonstration." Michael's head snapped up, something he'd completely forgotten about. Tom has been preparing for this project for a month now, and he doesn't even know what subject his son is working on. Meanwhile, Emma is seeing a student in the school's counseling room. It was her finest hour, soothing the wounds of young minds with gentle words. Today, however, her mind was a little scattered. James handed her a meaningful look as he brushed past her in the hallway. Emma felt her heart racing as she remembered the moment yesterday when she almost lost control. It was in the gym equipment room after school. James said he was going to show her some new theoretical information about student counseling. In the confined space, they were getting closer. James' fingers gently grazed the back of her hand, and at that moment, Emma felt an electric shiver run through her body. "You know," James whispered, "every time I see you talking to another teacher, I feel jealous." Emma took a step back and fled in a hurry, saying in a panic that she had to pick up her son. But the throbbing and guilt lingered in her mind. At the evening science demonstration, Tom was excited to show off his model of a solar-powered cart. Michael couldn't attend because of an emergency meeting, and Emma sat in the audience, looking at her son's disappointed eyes with mixed feelings. "He's such a smart kid." James sat down next to her at some point. "As good as you are." Emma subconsciously moved to the side. "James, we can't." "Why not?" James' voice was soft. "You deserve better, Emma. You deserve to be truly cared for, listened to, and understood." Those words seeped into Emma's heart like poison. She thought of Michael's recent perfunctory behavior, of the nights when she'd fallen asleep alone, of the dwindling amount of real communication between them. Late that night, Michael finally got home. The house was dark and a cold dinner was left on the table. He gently pushed open the door to his son's room and looked at the sleeping Tom, suddenly realizing that he had missed so much. Michael fumbled with his cell phone, checking the preliminary information Jack had sent on the investigation. James Wilson, 34, has a record of service in 3 different states, each time leaving abruptly. This surface information may seem mundane, but Michael knows that the truth is often hidden in the details. The next day was Saturday, and Emma said she had to go to school to prepare her lesson plan for the following week. Michael nodded, his eyes growing cold as he watched her well-dressed back. He picked up the phone. "Jack, it's me. I want the guy you're investigating to give me the most detailed background report possible." "Yes, whatever it takes." "Are you sure you want to go this way?" Jack sat in the corner of the cafe, his fingers tapping the tabletop. As Michael's former fellow trooper and now private investigator, he knows all too well the cost of investigating marital betrayal. Michael stared into his coffee cup with a determined look in his eyes. "Give me the most professional team you can find. I want to know everything about him." Jack opens his laptop and pulls up the preliminary report. James Wilson has taught in 3 states in the last 5 years, and each of his departures has been sudden. On the surface, it looks like a regular job hopper, but there are some interesting details. "Say on." Michael's voice was cold. He was very popular in every school, especially among his female colleagues. Each departure coincided with a relevant complaint being withdrawn before leaving. Jack paused. "I've sent a field trip." Meanwhile, Emma is in the school's counseling room when her phone vibrates to indicate a new message. It was from James. "There's a great play tonight. I have 2 tickets." Emma hesitates for a moment and replies, "Sorry, I have to do homework with Tom. Bring Tom along. He'll love it. It's children's theater." James replied quickly. Emma looked at her cell phone screen, struggling internally. Michael has been working late lately and Tom needs more attention. That night, after the play, James drove them home. Tom fell asleep in the back seat and James whispered, "Look, he's having fun. Kids need activities like this." Emma looked at her sleeping son in the rearview mirror and guilt flooded her heart. "James, this isn't right. What's wrong? Caring about a neglected family?" James' hand gently covered hers. "Emma, you deserve better." Emma didn't draw back her hand. The next morning, Michael received a call from Jack. Important discovery. Wilson was in a relationship with a married female teacher when he taught at his last school. The other husband found out and was ready to report it, but Wilson suddenly quit and disappeared. Michael's hands clenched the steering wheel. "Keep checking. I want the full chain of evidence." The following week, Michael began to notice more details. Emma's cell phone is always placed face down, and the password has changed. She began to work overtime more frequently, saying she had to prepare student counseling materials. Instead of pointing it out, Michael tells Jack's team to step up their investigation. They installed a legal GPS locator in Emma's car to record her driving tracks. Meanwhile, Jack sends someone to dig deeper into James' past. Interesting find, Jack messaged one rainy evening. Wilson used different names when he taught at his first school. His resume may be falsified. Michael immediately dialed the number of an old Army buddy, now working for the Department of Education. "Dave, check on someone's teaching credentials for me." Emma and James' relationship, however, heated up dramatically during this time. They began to have more personal contact. James always has the perfect excuse, discussing student psychological issues, preparing for co-curricular programs, and planning campus events. One afternoon, in the empty piano room, James finally kissed Emma. She did not refuse. At that moment, 10 years of marriage faltered in her mind. "Take you somewhere," James whispered in her ear. They drove to a cabin on the outskirts of town, which was far enough away from the hustle and bustle to become their secret garden. Michael discovers the unusual trajectory of Emma's vehicle through GPS records. Jack's team quickly confirmed the existence of the cabin. "Do we need to install surveillance equipment?" Jack asked. "No," Michael's voice was hoarse. "Sending someone to take pictures will be enough. In the meantime, go check the rental records for that cabin." The investigation revealed that James had rented the cabin 3 months earlier. He was premeditated. More evidence surfaced. His teaching credentials were indeed fraudulent, and he had a similar witch hunt record at his first 2 schools, which was cleverly covered up. "Are you going to expose him now?" Jack asked. Michael shook his head. "No, I'm going to make them taste the full bitter consequences of betrayal." Tom started asking why Mom was always out of the house. Michael just said that his mom was busy with work, but he noticed the confusion and hurt in his son's eyes. Emma's guilt grows by the day, but James always convinces her. "You've done nothing wrong," he said. "It's the man who never cared for you who's at fault." Michael is collecting more and more evidence. Jack's team took photos of Emma and James at the cabin, documenting each of their dates. At the same time, they gathered evidence of James' falsification of documents, records of complaints from previous schools, and details of how he had defrauded other families. "All the evidence is here." Jack handed over an encrypted flash drive. "What are you going to do about it?" Michael took a deep breath, a cold glint in his eyes. It's time to show them what the price of betrayal is. He began to formulate a well-thought-out plan. First, he sent out a message in the family group chat. "I've been so busy with work lately that I've neglected everyone. Let's have a small party at home this Friday night and invite a few close friends." Emma was at the cabin with James when she saw the message. "Michael's having a family party," she said, a little flustered. "He rarely does." James gently stroked her back. "Don't be nervous. Let him see that we're just regular co-workers. The more natural we are, the less we'll arouse suspicion." Emma nodded and replied to the group, "Good idea. Should we invite a few colleagues? Several of Tom's teachers have been looking after him recently." Michael quickly responded, "Of course it's good, especially that new gym teacher, Mr. James. Tom talks about him a lot." James smiled smugly when he saw Emma's forwarded chat. "See, everything's perfect. It's going to be a great night this Friday." None of them realized that they were walking step by step into an elaborate trap. Michael put the flash drive into the safe, a sneer playing at the corner of his mouth. This Friday, indeed, would be a night to remember, but by no means the one they thought it would be. 3 days before Friday's house party, Michael stood in Jack's office, staring at the three monitors on the wall. On the left is James Wilson's complete background check, in the center is Emma's activity track record, and on the right is a network map of contacts in the three state departments of education. Operation code named Dinner. Michael pointed to the timetable, his voice calm. "Every second counts from now on." Jack clicked on the first folder. All materials have been categorized and organized. The first is evidence of academic fraud, and we found the school records administrator from that year. And she has signed an affidavit? Good, Michael nodded. What about teaching credentials? Dave was a big help. Jack pulled up a couple of scans. These are from James' applications for teacher licensure in 3 states. And the handwriting identification shows the signatures are from different people. And he zoomed in on one of the documents. The issuer of this letter of recommendation has confirmed that it is a forgery. Michael picked up the phone. Initiate Phase 1. Later that afternoon, the Ohio Department of Education received a detailed anonymous tip. The reporting material is well organized and comes with a complete chain of evidence. At the same time, the Indiana Department of Education received a similar report. The chain has begun to tighten, Jack reported as soon as he received the news, and investigative teams have been formed in 2 states. Michael is looking at a particular file, an undisclosed incident from James' time at his first school. "Did you find that victim's husband?" "Found it." Jack handed over a transcript of the recording. He agreed to testify. James was using intimidation and threats to force them to remain silent back then. Meanwhile, Emma and James are completely immersed in their own world. That suburban cabin became their haven, and each rendezvous made Emma feel as if she were back in her youth. "As soon as I'm done with what I'm doing now," James said as he put his arm around Emma, "we'll go to California. No one there knows us, and you could open your own counseling studio." Emma leaned into his arms, her heart both sweet and apprehensive. "What about Tom?" "When the time comes, we can file for custody." James kissed her hair. "With the state of Michael's work, the judge will consider the child's feelings." What they didn't know was that these conversations were being recorded by a high-definition recording device installed in the cabin. Michael's eyes grew cold as he listened to the contents. "How's the preparation going?" The next day, Michael met Dave at the cafe next to the police station. It went better than expected. Dave sipped his coffee. All 3 state investigative teams are taking the case seriously. Especially after finding out it involved multiple frauds and threats, they were prepared to act jointly. Michael opened his laptop and pulled up a statement template. "What about the media side?" "It's all set." Dave pointed to a list of several key media outlets, which will follow up on the report as soon as it becomes public. "We also contacted several national educational news sites who are interested in this serial scam." "The school board side?" "The key players have been spoken to." Dave lowered his voice, "and they agreed to an emergency meeting as soon as the scandal broke. In fact, they've long had suspicions about some of James's behavior. They just struggled to prove it." Michael nodded. "The time is set for Friday night." Emma began to feel uneasy. James has become impatient lately and is always pushing her to make a decision as soon as possible. And Michael's sudden thoughtfulness confused her even more. "You seem to be very busy lately," Michael said gently over dinner. "I'd like to invite more of your coworkers to Friday's party to make it easier on you." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "All? Who's all invited?" "Mr. James has to come." Michael looked her in the eye. "Tom said he's been taking care of you lately." That night, Emma tossed and turned. She messaged James. "I always felt something was wrong." "Don't think much of it," James replied. "It's just a normal dinner. The more natural we act, the better." Late Thursday night, Michael was in his study making final preparations. The flash drive stores the complete evidence: the investigation report, audio recordings, photographs, and evidence of James' crimes. Tom has made arrangements to stay at his sister's house. Timetable of operations confirmed. Jack sent a final message. 3 states launching simultaneous investigations at noon tomorrow. At 3 p.m., the media received the explosive material. At 6 p.m., the board members were in place. At 7 o'clock, your family dinner begins. Michael slid the flash drive into his suit pocket. It's time to show them what the price of betrayal really is. Friday morning was a light morning. Emma stood in front of the mirror and repeatedly straightened her makeup, trying to hide her inner turmoil. James, meanwhile, hums in his apartment, imagining his new life with Emma in the near future. And Michael, standing at the window watching the sun rise. The most important lesson he learned while in the Special Forces. The best trap is the one that the prey walks into willingly. Night is about to fall, and an elaborate revenge is about to take place. No one knew that this seemingly normal Friday night would change everyone's fate forever. At 6:45 p.m. on Friday night, Michael stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows and watched the guests arrive. Dave had arrived early and was chatting with a few other guests. Jack and his team are on standby at the perimeter, monitoring the scene at all times. "Would you like to go and change your clothes, dear?" Michael said gently to Emma. "It's the host tonight." Emma forced a smile up the stairs. She looked decent in the mirror, just slightly pale. The phone vibrated, and it was James with a message. "Don't be nervous. Everything will be perfect." At 7 o'clock sharp, James arrived on time. With a decent smile, he greeted everyone present. "Sorry I'm late. There was a bit of traffic." He handed Emma a bouquet of flowers, a hidden tenderness hidden in his gaze. "James," Michael offered to walk up and shake hands. "I've heard Tom talk about you many times, and I finally got to meet in person today." The dinner began with a joyous atmosphere. Michael was the perfect host and took care of every guest. Dave brought up the topic of education at the right time, allowing James to talk eloquently about his teaching philosophy. Speaking of educational philosophy, Michael stood up and picked up his glass. "I've been interested lately in the issue of integrity in education. James, I wonder what you think about that." James was about to reply when his cell phone suddenly vibrated like crazy. He glanced at it, and his face instantly turned white. "What's wrong?" Emma asked with concern. "No, nothing." James' voice shook a little. "It's probably spam." Michael walked toward the projector. "Since we're talking about educational integrity, I've prepared some interesting information to share." He pressed the remote, and the big screen in the living room lit up. "It's a story of deception." Michael's voice was calm. "And the main character's name is James Wilson, a repeat fraudster who's been operating in 3 states in a row." The screen shows James' teaching credentials from different states next to the handwriting identification report. Emma felt out of breath, and James felt like he was nailed to a chair. "What's even more interesting," Michael clicked on the next file, "is that he has a similar MO at every school." The recording began to play, a testimony from the husband of one of the victims at James' former school. "Michael, what do you mean by that?" Emma's voice trembled. "Hold your horses, honey." Michael flashed a sneer. "The fun's just beginning." He opened his cell phone, checked the latest news. Everyone's phone rang with a push notification at the same time. News of the joint investigation of James Wilson by 3 state education departments has been in the press, with major media outlets competing for coverage. James snapped to his feet. "That's slander. I'm going to sue you." "Yes?" Michael gracefully opened a video file. "And what explains all this?" The screen plays a picture of Emma and James at the cabin, their conversation clearly audible. "When the time is right, we can file for custody." James' voice echoed in the dead silence of the living room. Emma sat paralyzed on the couch, her eyes blurred with tears. The other guests looked at each other in disbelief, and some quietly got up to take their leave. "You can't," James colored. "I can explain." "Explain what?" Michael interrupted. "Explain how you destroyed other families with the same tactics? Or explain why you used fake identities in all 3 states." The doorbell rang, and 2 officers walked in. "Mr. James Wilson? We need your assistance with the investigation." James looked frantically at Emma. "Help me explain. Tell them it's all a misunderstanding." Emma, however, as if all her strength had been drained from her, just stared blankly at the screen still playing. Those intimate moments, the sweet promises, all seem so ironic now. One more thing, Michael walked over to Emma. Here are the divorce papers. I'll take custody of Tom. You don't have a problem with that, do you? Emma took the papers, her fingers trembling. At that moment, her cell phone also kept vibrating with messages from her colleagues at the school. The board has called an emergency meeting, and her position as a counselor teacher has been suspended pending investigation. Michael. She choked back a sob trying to say something. Needless to say, Michael interrupted coldly. I thought you guys always said I didn't know how to care about people. Now, let me care for you well in my own way. James was still yelling that it was a conspiracy when he was taken away by the police. Emma sat paralyzed on the couch alone, looking at the dispersed guests, the messy table, and the evidence still playing on the wall. She realized then how ridiculous her proud knowledge of psychology was in the face of Michael's plan for revenge. A week later, James' fraud case was filed simultaneously in 3 states. Not only is he permanently disqualified as a teacher, but he also faces multiple criminal charges. Emma's divorce settlement quickly took effect, and she lost her job, custody, and social status. Michael moved to another city with Tom. From the balcony of his new home, he watched his son play in the garden with mixed feelings. Was it worth it? Jack asked him when he visited. Michael looked away. It's not a question of whether it's worth it or not. It's a way of making them understand what the price of betrayal is. 3 months later, James was interviewed in prison. When the reporter asked him why he did it, he smiled bitterly and said, "Maybe this is the retribution of fate. I thought I was the hunter, not realizing I was the prey." Emma moved back in with her parents. She tries to contact Tom, but the lawyer Michael hired makes sure she can't get near her son. She receives daily rebukes from former coworkers and friends, and those who hounded her for her professional abilities are now laughing at her self-destruction. Regret? Father asked her. Emma looked out the window at the setting sun and murmured, I don't know what I regret more, betraying Michael or trusting James. A year later, Michael's medtech program had a major breakthrough. At the press conference, a reporter asked him how he managed to succeed despite the family changes. Michael gave a meaningful smile. Life has taught me one thing. Never betray those who truly love you, because their vengeance could make you regret it for the rest of your life. Tom is getting older and occasionally asks about his mom. Michael simply said, someday you'll realize that some choices have a price that takes a lifetime to pay. And in some small town, Emma stops and looks away every day as she passes the school. It had been her pride, and now it was a permanent scar. She finally realizes that Michael has destroyed not only her present, but her future. This elaborate revenge is not just a dramatic ending to a dinner party, but a punishment that lasts a lifetime. It reminds everyone that the price of betrayal is much heavier than one might think. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.